He's got a tough race against freshman Republican Congressman Nick Lalota. Can former CNN commentator John Avlon pull it off? So here's the question. Can you pull it off, given the fact that they gave you a little bit of a problem when they decided to change some of the districts and gave you a few more Republicans than had been in the district before?
Absolutely. We're going to win this. And let me tell you why. This district is a third, a third, and a third. Essentially, it's third Republicans, third Democrats, and the more independents registered in the district than any other in the state. This is a state that's historically been a swing district, as you know. It goes back between Democrats and Republicans, and it's time. And Nick Lalota is far too far right for the district for a freshman.
So, but they've been taking a lot of shots at you.
Sure.
They've been saying that you don't live in a district, you still have an apartment in Manhattan, that you worked for Rudy Giuliani a million years ago as a speechwriter. Why don't you take some shots at him?
I do.
Take your best shot.
Well, how about this? He doesn't even live in the district.
What?
He's the only member of Congress represented by another member of Congress. Between him and me, I'm the only one who can vote for myself on Election Day. He's represented by Andrew Garbarino. And he promised the voters he would move to the district if he was elected, and he never did.
But we have to point out that you don't have to live in the district. He's not like violating a law.
No, he's not violating law. He's just violating common sense. But he's violating common sense when he cheers the overturning of Roe v. Wade and says states should go farther, or says that, we should lower the age to buy AR-15s, or mocks the bipartisan border security bill. I have a record of working with Democrats and Republicans. I think we need to get things done for folks and stop fighting and start fixing.
So here's the thing. There's a lot of issues we could talk about, but one of the things that I've been interested in is Social Security.
Yeah.
And I think people in your district are as well.
You're damn
because
right.
as you know, the funding for the Social Security Trust Fund is going to expire. So my question to you is, what's the solution? Is it more taxes? Is it something else?
First of all, I love that you're talking about solutions, because too often in journalism and in our debates, we talk about problems, not solutions. The first responsibility is to keep Social Security solvent, Medicare solvent.
How do you do that?
Well, I think what you should do is raise the cap. I think the cap is too low, and I think right now the Social Security tax cap kicks in at $150,000.
So people will pay more in taxes out of their salary.
What they'll do is pay a proportional amount, even if they make more money than the average worker, and I think that's an issue of fairness in the interest of solvency. There needs to be a reasoning together. There needs to be a coming together. This isn't an entitlement. It's a commitment we have made that people have paid into. And so when you look at things like the Republican Study Committee that my opponent is a member of, that says we should cut benefits, we should cut Social Security, we should cut Medicare, I think that's entirely out of step with common sense and where the vast majority of voters are. This is a commitment. We make our commitments. We do that by ensuring Social Security is solvent.
So basically what you're saying is that people who can afford to pay more in taxes because they're earning a certain amount of money will pay a little bit more so that people who get to be retirement age would get their benefits.
We need to do what's necessary to keep Social Security solvent. But let me tell you this. This is an issue of the cap is artificially low. There are a lot of things that need to be modernized. And ultimately, there'll be some sort of bipartisan reckoning and reasoning together, as there should be, around a shared goal. But New York State, for example, is too highly taxed. I think one of the things we need to do, and one of the things I'll commit to do, and the Democrats can do because of the expiration of the Trump tax cuts, is to get the state and local tax deduction back. Trump and the Republicans took it away. Salt. Right? Trump and the Republicans raised our taxes, and they did it out of spite as part of a political stunt. And they can talk a good game, but they're really just too invested in the red state to blue state divide. It's an issue of fairness. We in New York pay more to the federal government than we get back.
But I have to say one thing. So every single congressman, including the Republican you're running against, have asked for SALT to be reinstated. Yeah. But nobody else, none of the other Republicans in Congress want to do it.
That's the point. He could talk about it. Democrats will get it done. And that's the key difference. And look, it's an average of $10,000 back in working families and middle-class families' pockets every year.
And believe me, I get it.
Yeah, so that's the point. So let's stop talking. Let's start doing. Democrats can get it done. Republicans can talk, but they can't get it done.
So here's the other thing. I'm talking about Social Security. The former President Trump has now been talking about the idea of not taxing Social Security benefits. So we need to point out that actually in the state of Minnesota, my producer pointed this out to me, the state of Minnesota statewide does not tax Social Security benefits if a couple makes up to $100,000. Do you think that that's a good idea, that if you're going to get a pension from the federal government, Social Security, that you won't have to pay federal taxes on that?
I think it's an interesting idea, but I think it's one we need to discuss and debate. Look, I think that we need to make sure that the federal government, that we're dealing with our deficits and our debt, and we're keeping Social Security solvent. The problem with taking the Social Security tax away, it's incredibly popular and it understandable, particularly in an economic downturn or crisis. But that actually compounds the problem of the solvency of Social Security. Again, let's do our job, right? Show up, reason together, get things done.
So you think that Donald Trump's proposing that because he's trying to get older voters to come to the Republican side and vote Republican in the presidential election?
Look, Donald Trump doesn't give a damn about the deficit or the debt. He added $7 trillion to the debt when he was president. Not a single Republican said boo about it. They only care about fiscal responsibility when a Democrat is president. The reality is that we've got to come together and reason together. We've got to have a sense of generational responsibility in our politics. That's been missing. We need to create something hopeful on the other side of Trumpism so we can realize that we can reason together, that America moves forward when we work together, and they're common sense problem solving that we can get big things done like immigration reform, like border security, that I'd vote for on my first day in Congress.
So let's talk about border security, because once when you were at CNN, you actually said that border security was a vulnerability issue for Democrats.
Absolutely.
Do you still think that way? And what do the Democrats have to do to make it a saleable issue to voters come November?
Get it done. Look, I mean,
but what do they get done?
Well, first of all, support the bipartisan border security bill.
Aha.
And my opponent mocked it, right? And I think people understand. You know, he fired off a tweet saying, you know, his 9-year-old could have negotiated a better deal than Republican Senator James Langford. People, I think, realize that Republicans want to fearmonger off migrants. They want to fundraise off those fears, but they don't want to fix it. And I think that's a firing offense. I would support reintroducing that bipartisan border security bill my first day in Congress, because that's something that we can get done and need to get done so it can be signed by President Harris, who said she would sign it. Trump pulled the plug on a bipartisan bill, and people like Nick Lalota took the knee. We need to reason together to get it done, solve the problem.
Are you looking at a solution that's going to limit the number of people who are allowed to come into this country?
Sure, we need to make sure the system works. We need more legal. I'm the grandson of immigrants and a native New Yorker. I care deeply about immigration because it makes our country better. But we need more legal immigration and less illegal immigration. When you say limit, do we need to make sure the laws are enforced, that the asylum rules are in place so that people actually can come in an orderly fashion? Yes, because rule of law is necessary for faith that the system works. But it's also good for the economy. It's good for farmers. We need to create a pathway to citizenship and get the dreamers out of the shadows. That's what comprehensive immigration reform does. That's what we need to do. And I think most people get that. But in the absence of that, as a down payment, let's get border security done first.
So I would be remiss if I didn't ask you what you think about Kamala Harris's pick for Vice President, Tim Walz.
I think it's great. Look, here you've got someone who's been a public school teacher. He's been in the military for 20 years. This is someone who's been a congressman who represented a Republican-leaning district, a lot more difficult than New York won, and won it multiple times, and then has been a prairie progressive governor in a way that brings people together. And he's clean. He speaks in a way that's relatable. He talks like a human being, and he's got a good sense of humor. I think all those are great strengths. And so let's go. Let's have an optimistic view for the future of our country again.
So you think now there's hope that the Democrats might be able to prevail?
Huge hope. And I can feel it on the ground. I think the whole turnout model of the election has changed. I think young people are going to be fired up. I think we're going to see incredibly high turnout. And I always believed Trump's water level would be lower than it was in 2020. Because he was president then, and because that was before January 6th. But I think there's an enormous grassroots enthusiasm, and people want optimism and hope, not fear and division. They want to look forward, not get dragged back to the past.
You think Donald Trump is panicking? We have about 30 seconds left.
Yes.
Why?
Because I think he wants the attention on himself. He doesn't give a damn about uniting the country. He's not trying to reach out. And so I think the whole calculus of the election is dependent on a candidate he's no longer running against. But let's focus on not what we're against. Let's focus on what we're for, how we can come together and solve great problems on the other side of Trumpism, rebuild the middle class, and rebuild the middle of our politics. That's what I'm committed to.
So you got 15 seconds left. Tell me how you're going to win.
We're going to win by firing up Democrats, winning over independents, and even a slice of Republicans who understand that Donald Trump doesn't represent what they want, that we're not as divided as our politics make it seem.
And independents are going to come to you.
Because we're going to protect abortion rights, we're going to rebuild the middle class, restore STALT, and make sure border security is implemented.
And on that note, we're going to have to leave it right there for now. But our conversation continues right after the show on our streaming channel, CBS News New York. We're back with a bonus conversation with congressional candidate John Avlon. So here's the question. How do you unwind?
Look, I've got 2 young kids. My wife and I have 2 young kids, and I find kids are the meaning of life, but playing with them generally re-energize and recharge. I love baseball. I'm a big Yankee fan. I love music. I'm a former musician, so I listen to a lot of music.
So what's the best job you ever had?
This.
Running for
I loved being editor-in-chief of the Daily Beast. I absolutely loved it. I loved being a journalist. I loved being an anchor and analyst at CNN. But the sense of purpose is, I think, really what we most crave. And I think the sense of purpose that comes with a run like this, fighting the good fight as a happy warrior, I hope, knowing that this matters. And we're in a 90-day sprint to try to defend American democracy and build something better on the other side of this. That feels great.
What's the worst job you ever had?
Wow, that's a great question. I think I worked in a recording studio in Boston one summer, and it was a very cool place. But I wasn't maybe realized that the sound mixing wasn't for me.
It wasn't for you. Okay,
Yeah.
so
I am a former musician though. I like being in front of the microphone.
What instrument did you play, by the way?
I was a lead singer in bands.
No kidding.
Oh, kidding, no kidding.
I should ask you to sing, but I'm not going to.
Don't worry about it. Don't subject the audience to that.
Did you ever play a sport in school?
Yeah, I was a swimmer. I played baseball. I was always a bigger fan than talent. But yeah, baseball.
Is there a movie, book, or show that always makes you tear up?
Oh God, It's a Wonderful Life. I mean, the scene. My favorite scene in any movie is To Kill a Mockingbird, when Gregory Peck's sitting on the porch, and the mob comes for the client he's trying to defend, a lynch mob, and they're threatening him, and then his child comes up front and recognizes one of the people in the crowd. And that creates such a sense of shame and a human connection and recognition that the mob dissipates. That, to me, is the most beautiful scene in film.
So do you speak any languages besides English?
Spanish badly.
Seriously?
Sí, un poco.
Good for you. Un poco. Good. What's your favorite dessert?
Ice cream. Cherry vanilla ice cream.
Cherry vanilla. Do you have a hidden talent?
I guess I've already told you about it, probably singing.
When was the last time you tried something new?
When I declared for Congress.
And that was new for sure. So what are you reading right now?
Oh God, I read. I'm a historian. I write history books on the side. My most recent book, Lincoln and the Fight for Peace, wrote a book on Washington's farewell. Right now, I'm listening because I'm driving a lot. Let's see. I'm reading a book called about Eisenhower's leadership strategy. Listening to a book by William Manchester about John F. Kennedy. A great book called How Minds Change, about the art of persuasion. I recognize to anyone in this election cycle.
So I have to ask you, would you be willing to debate your opponent if there was such a thing?
Oh, hell yes. I've challenged him to 6 debates the night we won the primary, 70-30. Haven't got a commitment yet.
But you're hopeful.
Stop ducking the debates. The people deserve better. Let's debate.
And on that note, thank you for joining me.
Thank you.
And thank you at home for joining us as well. We're back with another bonus conversation. I want to talk to you now about Donald Trump and the fact that the change of Democratic candidates seems to have put him off base a little bit, and he doesn't seem to know how to deal with the new reality of the Democratic ticket. Do you agree with that?
Of course. Listen, he thought he was running against Joe Biden. This is a nightmare for the Trump campaign. He sees how electrifying Vice President Harris is. He sees all the press that she's getting and the enthusiasm. This used to be him. He used to be able to pack those stadiums. Now he sees someone else doing it. It's really concerning. And the fact that his vice president has been nothing but a disaster. So he's really feeling the heat.
If you actually look at it, he already beat Joe Biden. That's all he did. It's no different than the Torricelli race that Lautenberg stepped in and took over in New Jersey. When that Senate race was going on at the last minute, right before deadlines, Forrester was running against Torricelli, and he stepped out, and in stepped Lautenberg.
You love aging yourself on the program, don't you?
So the former president goes to the NABJ, the National Association of Black Journalists, and he makes some comments about Kamala Harris, saying he thought she was Indian, then she decided she was black, and I don't know whether she's Indian or black, and a lot of people were offended by that. What was your take on it?
I don't think he should have gone there. I think when you look at the whole entire clip at the beginning, the way the questions were asked, he had a layup to defend himself and go into his record and go after the interviewer. The interviewer buried him in the questioning at the beginning and just the opening statement, but he did not need to go there, nor should he have gone there.
I think it's one of the most respected organizations in the country, black journalists representing an incredible group of folks.
That's right.
It's important for him to have been there. And I'm happy that he was there. I wish he would have said something different. What he said was the same old racist stuff, Donald Trump. I mean, this is when he's there, you can't be surprised, right? He's there. This is the same guy that proposed a ban on Muslims. This is the same guy who said a Mexican-American judge couldn't be safe with him, couldn't be fair to him. This is the same guy who got sued by the Nixon administration for housing discrimination against blacks. This is the same. And he's there. He couldn't change.
But JC,
he couldn't change.
Let's look at the reality here. He had a layup. The vice president was not going. He offered to go by Zoom. They said, you can't, you must attend. He went and attended. He had the opportunity to say so much, and he said that. That's the mistake he made. Yes, he should have gone there. No, he shouldn't have said that.
So do we think that Donald Trump is now, and before when he was running against Joe Biden, I think he thought that he had the polls were all in his favor and that he had an easy campaign.
Of course.
Now that the dynamic has changed, do you think he's now worried about the race? And do you think he hasn't decided exactly how to attack the two Democrats he has to face up against?
Marcia, how many years and decades have we all watched him in New York? I remember for 30 or 40 years I've been following this man. And I'm dating myself, JC, as you always say. And I've worked with this guy in the casino industry in New York and in New Jersey and Las Vegas.
And he
listens to his own mind. He will not take the advice from anybody else. They were able to control things at this point, but he is his own worst enemy at times. It's a last man in the room syndrome at times, and he will often be the last one in the room by himself, make a decision, and it's not the right decision. He has to stay on script, and stay on script, he can win this race. Go off script, he might lose it.
Win this race. There is no new script.
The new script is to whatever you decide you're going to paint your opponent as. In any race, you have 3 opportunities in the next 86 days to make your message. Don't forget, in the middle of September...
Why only 3?
It's the rule of 3 in campaigns. Arthur Finkelstein had that as a pollster, many others. I've had candidates that I said, let's do 3 things. I'm not going to name this person, but they put 4 on the list. They said, no, I want 4, I want 4. Every time they gave the speech or they forgot the 4th. So 3 is so much better, but also you're talking about informed viewers. Right now we're talking about 100,000, 250,000 voters in the swing states.
That's right.
Those voters have how much time on it? They have families, they have jobs, they have lives.
Yeah, they do. But you know what they have?
Don't get a chance to hit somebody again and again. You have to have 3 points, get it done, and go for the win.
Obi, we're talking about what does Trump do? Trump cannot change. This is not 2016 anymore. James Comey gave him that election. We know in 2016, if James Comey doesn't come out in October of that year with some nonsense about Hillary Clinton, he would have lost the race. You know this. But that's neither here nor there. Right now, it's not 2016. It's a whole new race. You have an exciting candidate for president. You have a grandpa figure for vice president that's going to connect with a lot of folks. It's about 270 electoral votes. I just do not see how people who are informed viewers can see and hear the things from the NBJ, from the convention, and questioning her identity of whether or not she's black or Indian. Looking at the January 6th commercials that are coming.
Doesn't see
they
that.
care when you show them, and there's only a few voters that are going to make this decision.
Right now, there's 70% of America that doesn't know anything about Harris's pick.
Right.
70%.
But do you know what? 100% of America knows that Trump's pick said that women who don't have children should have less of a say in the country. Families that don't have children should not have the same number of votes as people in the country. They know that. And they know he's weird.
And the in vitro argument of which this governor has a daughter, Hope, that was born by in vitro, and he spoke about that at his announcement, is a terrific narrative. There's no question about it. The question is, who gets their message out in the next 88 days?
But here's my question to you. I think that, you have to take a look at what the former president is now trying to do. He suddenly started talking about the idea of not having people who get Social Security benefits pay federal taxes. That, to me, seems like he's trying to bring in older voters into his camp and attract them at a time when he feels like he's losing some traction.
Well, don't forget, younger voters.
What's your interpretation?
Younger voters are going for Harris right now at this point. The black voters are going more for Harris than they were before for Biden at this point. So it's a natural to try to bring seniors over and make sure seniors come out to vote because.
But how can you do both? How can you decide we're not going to pay taxes on Social Security, but the Plan 2025 says, let's cut Social Security.
It's a false promise. He knows that that's a very popular thing to do, just like he knows that not taxing tips was going to hopefully get him Nevada and because of the Las Vegas sector. But we all know that those are false promises. You can promise these things to people to get them the short-term votes. You know what would be great?
Just like student loans, paying back student loans now.
But
that's another false promise.
I know a lot of teachers that have received relief from student loans. I know a lot of students of mine who have received student loan support. But the idea that you're not going to tax Social Security and you have folks in your administration that are talking about cutting Social Security, the idea that you're all of a sudden going to unilaterally not tax tips, these are false promises you make in the short term. People see right through
There's two things. You have seniors with income problems, and you have rising costs right now, which becomes the question on this election. When you vote the economy, who are you going to vote for, and who do you have confidence in? So this is the Social Security cut for seniors, as cutting the taxes they have to pay on that. That's about income for them. That's not about Social Security and its cost.
Yeah.
The cost you're talking about and cutting anything for Social Security benefits for people that are 25 and 35 years old, whatever it might be, that's a different example of what you're talking about for the entitlement that's broken and must be fixed.
So let's talk about J.D. Vance, his running mate. He, this past week, pulled what some people have called a stunt, where he went over to the plane that was Air Force Two, and he tried to talk to the press people there, saying, attacking her for not having a press conference with them. But yet she has had several gaggles on the plane with reporters. But was this a stunt? Or
was a stunt.
Is this a real issue that people care about?
Wouldn't your students call it a boss move? Isn't that what they call it
That's
nowadays?
not a boss move.
No, that's what they talk about on Twitter and on TikTok.
That's a ridiculous move.
They called it a boss move.
Look, first of all, it's not a boss move. Stalking the Vice President of the United States, showing up next to her plane, talking about this could be my plane next year. It's the most ridiculous thing I've ever seen. It's not presidential. It speaks desperation.
It's summer. You don't have your students for this week, do you?
No, but soon, in about a week and a half. But it speaks of desperation. And what we're looking at is a desperate man trying to change the narrative about how he feels about women with no children and trying to get attention and looking ridiculous doing it.
Change the narrative is actually what you're supposed to do.
Yeah, but he's trying. But this is not how you do it. Well, stalking the vice president? Have some respect.
How should you change the narrative? What's the
go have a press conference and try to contrast your record as senator of the 18 months you've been in the Senate with the governor of Minnesota.
Who else was
do something.
How long when they ran for president?
No, very different. He had a long history in government. Don't do that. That's totally different. And he ran. No, it's very, very different than the guy who just got elected after writing a book. Give me a break. But anyway, that's neither here nor there. The fact is that you can change the narrative.
Vice president, not president. There's a difference there too.
Stalking the vice president it smells of desperation. I mean, it's absolutely absurd. And we both know that he needs to change the narrative by say something different other than going to the press, waiting for the vice president, trying to get that press and stalking.
Also, I want to point out one thing. It was sort of interesting to me that as Vice President Harris decided to go on her battleground state tour, the Republicans decided that J.D. Vance would follow her or try to have a press conference earlier in the day before her press conference, and as she went from state to state to state, he followed her and bracketed her and went from
brilliant
state to state.
campaign move.
Brilliant.
Yes, because every night when they're on the story covering the vice president and
they're in the same
a running mate, they're in the same story. You would have to cover both.
You know what's funny?
You couldn't report on one, not the other. It's a great way to take 30 minutes of newscast, whatever it might be, for the story that is 4 minutes long or 5 minutes long, and you took a minute and a half out of it, and she still gets 3 minutes.
He looks like a lightweight. It's a rookie move. These are things that we would see interns in our campaigns do. Go ahead, follow that campaign. You don't have the candidate for vice president following the campaign like he's some sort of intern running around.
That's not what the viewer sees.
The viewer sees desperation.
On the nightly news, the viewer on the nightly news sees whatever the reporters cover. That's what they see. They don't see what you and I see. They don't follow the stuff like you and I do. They get to see.
So here's the thing. You say it's a smart move. You say it's a
desperation.
Right.
I'm right because he knows that in campaigns we send the rookie intern out of high school to go follow a campaign to tell us what's going on. You don't send your candidate out there to do the same thing. When you do, you know very well it's desperation.
I'm sorry. When I ran Bob Turner's race, I was the one that jumped in front of the camera against Weprin.
I did it. You did.
I did.
Yeah, because send the campaign manager. You don't send Turner and say, "Hey, follow him around."
Turner wasn't there. I would have used Turner.
It's a bad move. It smells of desperation.
got so mad at me. I'm sorry about that. If you got to see it again now.
I need to ask you one more question. So the theory of the Trump campaign now seems to be to cast the Democratic ticket as being radically to the left, communist, Marxist. These are the words that are coming out of their mouths. Is that something that will resonate with people around the country and in the important battleground states that they have to win?
I think so, Marcia, and let me tell you why. There's a group of Democrats, the Socialist Democrats of America, and a lot of other those guys that you call.
So you think that's a winning strategy?
I think that Americans understand that there is a socialist mood within certain parts of the Democratic Party. They call them the squad, call them whatever you want to call. So it's not as if it's far off. So if you tell folks, they're just part of the same socialist movement that you see swelling up in the Democratic Party, it could work with some folks.
The Harris campaign,
it could, but it won't
stick. I give them a lot of credit for coordination. When we saw that the 9/11 attackers had cut a deal with the Pentagon, what happened? Joe Biden, Secretary of Defense, stepped in and squashed it. Why? Because it's the right thing to do. And also, I've got to believe there was a lot of talk saying, wait a second, the Pentagon might have cut the deal,
how do the Democrats
but we don't let it do.
That attack, the attack that they were too liberal for the country?
Well, but to that point, they're staying away from it. AOC, in her email, that when she endorsed the Harris ticket, she did not talk about anything on a socialist, progressive standpoint about why. Otherwise, she would have, every other email, she talks about her progressiveness, and she's proud of it. She did not label
because
it on
she's
him.
left it. Look,
and that was a brilliant way to do
AOC is no longer tied with the Democratic Socialists of America. They have already abandoned her. She's become not one of them anymore. And quite frankly, the way you do it, and Vice President Harris is doing this already, I'm a former prosecutor. I'm a former attorney general. I am not a socialist. Look at my record, and look at Governor Walz's record. It's one of the best states for business. I think it's 6th in the country. So you can't be a socialist.
Him as being pro-transgender, which they're saying is another radical left policy.
Well, you can't. Go ahead.
I'm going to say it's all a question of what money gets spent where to what viewers. That's where it's going to come out. No matter what they say in a press conference, no matter what you report on, no matter what anyone else talks about, whatever money is spent to inform that 250,000 voters and less, what the issues are and whether or not they get defined that way. What this pick did was it reassured the base for Harris, but it also echoed all of the issues they have in anything in the progressive world. Is it progressive for school lunches for all children? No, it's not. But that's the defense of progressive. That's a great thing to do. Is it progressive to do certain things in the trans world above and beyond what they've done elsewhere in the country yet, and where it's accepted here in New York? Accept everybody, love everybody, that's all great. But do we force certain things onto other people? What happened after the George Floyd murder? What happened then, and what was Minneapolis like? What will that be like? I will bet you some commercial somewhere. Yeah. I'd love to run that super PAC.
You know what's funny?
They're going to make a lot of money.
You know what's crazy?
They're going to show Minnesota.
Obi, I come on with you and I listen to you and I hear what you're saying, but I just do you not know the other contrast? Do you not know that you have January 6th videos that are coming that are going to show how Trump supporters attacked cops and wanted to hang Mike Pence?
Do
you not? But just a few minutes ago, you're talking about
an ugly campaign.
This is going to be ugly. But to tell me that they're communist, socialists, and all this stuff won't resonate. I mean, it's low-hanging fruit for Republicans. I was there for 21 years. It's low-hanging fruit to say, hey, listen, they're socialists. But when you say, I'm a prosecutor, attorney general, look, I have my business-friendly state, it's hard to show that someone is a socialist.
The undecided voter. I hate to be watching TV in those swing states, because all you're going to be doing is watching political ads from Labor Day until the election, especially when they start early.
And remember something else, Marcia. Abortion is still on the ballot. It was on the ballot before. It's on the ballot now. And Democrats are going to be able to say, this guy right there took you right away.
And Harris's pick has a great story about IVF. There's no question about it. That will resonate with a lot of men and women.
I'm telling you now, Marcia, I'm telling you now, mark the date. Vice President Harris wins this election.
We've already had that bet. It's a box of cigars. We had that. I'm not changing my bet on where I'm predicting this will come.
So what's your bet again?
I think Trump is still going to win this race.
I think Vice President Harris wins this election. There's no question about it.
In November, and on that note, thank you for joining me, and thank you, home, for joining us as well.
Thank you.
Thank you.